Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I want to welcome everyone who's here in person with us at the Clemente and everyone who is tuning in at home on the live stream. So we're here basically to talk about the impact of public art in public housing. We're here to look at and examine this particular program with ArtBridge and how that was laid out across the city, and then also discuss some ideas and mechanisms to sustain this work in the future. From the perspective of the artists as collaborators with the community, and well, what was the impact for you and how the work and process played out?
For me, doing public art makes it accessible. It deletes the class that happens often in an art conversation, where these communities also know that they deserve just as much a story to be told as other communities as well.
That's amazing that across the board, the impact of this program is much bigger than just having a beautiful work of art. Something I'd like to discuss now is the narratives that the different works of art are communicating, the stories that are being told through the work. If you go and look at the exhibit yourself, you will see the faces of residents, people of all ages, being at home and enjoying themselves. And so I want to kind of dig into that a little bit about the stories that we're telling through this artwork, the narratives that we're uplifting and celebrating, and even what does this mean about narratives in housing? So thinking even bigger than just on the personal level, but maybe on a systemic level too.
It was amazing because no one offered them that kind of platform in order for them to express themselves in the community. Because again, lack of resources, lack of just someone there to empower them to engage. So just that ArtBridge coming into our communities and giving our youth and our young people an opportunity to express themselves other than what our outside society sees us, it is really impact us as a whole.
Jazmine, just because I saw your work downstairs, we worked together before at Groundswell. I know the power of symbolism in your work. I also noticed in your work downstairs, you even have the footprints, the design of the buildings incorporated, as well as the faces of residents. So maybe you could talk a bit about the process of how that imagery came together and what the response was.
NYCHA blueprints are very interesting, though. If you look at NYCHA blueprints, they are exactly the same as Rikers blueprint. A lot of probation facilities blueprints. So you have to think about, like, it's like, yes, we're giving beautiful art to these communities, but it's really tying in bigger and larger systems and disadvantages that these communities experience.
The particular art project for Polo Ground in Harlem. Is anybody familiar with Rucker Park? It was like 50 years ahead of where the NBA is now. And it's right across the street from the Polo Ground. And there was no scaffolding. So I'm like, man, what's kind of like basketball related? And the facilities they have a beautiful community center with an awesome gym. And so I said, there has to be people in this community that are unsung. How about doing banners of them, like representing them?
Also thinking from a DCLA lens, the importance that this program in particular has around advancing equity in arts and culture. You got a little bit at it just now, but I'd love for you to go a little deeper if you can.
Having artists and communities, be involved with and work with and do work in these spaces is just one beginning way of us sort of trying to balance that inequity. It's not the beginning and the end, but it's sort of like part of the journey to get there. Some of the other things that we're trying to do, and again, this is one of the programs that I run. We have a couple of other ones that do permanent art. So in terms of who gets to make those decisions, we make sure that's well represented in those individuals. In terms of who gets to be at a table to make sure what these decisions move forward with, that's important. And who the artists are as well. Because the artists who get to do this work are the ones who are quote unquote educated in the processes. And so we make sure that even if you're not, then we do workshops to get you to some level where you're able to do that.
I wanted to ask, just coming in with this work, were there any moments of kind of friction with different residents and leaders around what is this, and how do we ensure this is not just going to exacerbate how art changes communities?
That was one of the kickback, right? It was a Band-Aid on what was already there. The whole perception of we want to live where these things are down. I was very apprehensive. Put this up 10 more years. Y'all putting these beautiful facades up for 10 more years. That wasn't the case.
Speaking as a NYCHA resident, but also an artist, the first thing, especially ArtBridge's initiative, is putting these works on scaffolding. And so that's automatically like for people, they're like, what is this? This scaffolding has been up for 8 years. We're still waiting to see the roof repairs. So when you come and you're like, I want to put this beautiful art, they're like, what's this? I don't know what this is. How is this helping us? I think there is that resistance, but when you just keep showing up, like how you knock on the doors, just knowing that, all right, someone cares enough to come to my door and be like, all right, come outside. And it's like, I don't really feel like it. It's like, come on, you need some vitamin D. You need some sunlight. You know, like presenting it in that way, I think helps to make these projects a little easier when there is resistance.
In general, and particularly these types of murals and the artwork where it's very personal to the community, it sort of shares a different perspective. And so I think, that's super important.
It's like I often feel like people just walk past if they don't live in NYCHA. So this causes you to stop. Be like, oh, there's humans in there. There's people in there. There is life. Like, hey, we're here. We're human.
There's so many opportunity and great people that come out of public housing, and great artists, great doctors, great lawyers, and that's the whole thing that we need to keep funding and to uplift and empower the community, that NYCHA community, so there will be a generational wealth or systemic, like a growth in our community.
Good evening, and thank you to everyone who joined us online.